Hello, biology, and welcome to your introduction to evolution of populations. So in evolution, we'll see how new species evolve over time due to natural selection, genetic variation, and genetic mutations. What is a population? Well, a population is same species of organism found in the same place at the same time, and they show signs of reproduction. So how many different populations do you see in this picture? Well, I see at least three. So we've got our tree species, our grass population, and then our population of zebra. There might also be a wildebeest back here, but I'm not 100% sure. And that's not a population, that's just an individual. So populations evolve, not individuals. Individuals, you're born with the genetics you inherit. Your DNA can only change if by a random mutation. So to be considered a population, you have to be the same species. Well, what is a species? Essentially, a species is a group of organisms that can breed and produce viable offspring. So a horse is a species, a donkey is a species, and when they reproduce on their own, they make horses and they make donkeys. However, if you try to mix the two, you make an infertile mule. So it's infertile, which means it's not viable, which means that the horse and the donkey are two different species. So natural selection, survival and reproduction. Environments change over time. In New Mexico, as we see in these two pictures, there are different types of rocks due to some ancient volcanic activity. Different individuals might suffer or benefit as a result of the traits they inherited or mutations they acquire. So at Location A, the white mice have an advantage. You can't really see them. But if the same population moves to location B, suddenly the dark mice have the advantage. Populations evolve when they are exposed to new environmental conditions, and certain organisms are able to survive and reproduce. Those that reproduce pass on advantageous traits. So over time, certain traits become more common, or the allele frequency changes. As you can see here, at location B, the allele frequency of dark mice increased over time because they are more likely to survive. So how many different species do you see on this map? Well, these 6 salamanders occupy different ranges or regions that they are able to survive in. These 6 species share a common ancestor, and geographic features such as the mountain range called the Sierra Nevadas separate populations that may evolve into new species over time through natural selection. Salamanders in Northern California are adapted to moist, high elevation conditions, where those in Southern California are adapted to dry desert conditions. Species are adapted to certain geographic ranges. In these ranges, they are able to survive and reproduce. That is why we don't see hippos, cheetahs, and cactus occurring in Arkansas naturally. So in the case of humans, as a species, we are global in our range. So the salamanders could only go, a couple hundred miles as a population. But humans, because we can fly, we have populations in Blytheville, populations in Memphis, but our range is everywhere. So in order for evolution to occur, there must be variation. So different traits exist within a given species or population. So these options, this variation, are the raw building materials of evolution to use. If there's no variation or option, a species is stuck to what it's available, even if it is weak or unfavorable. So if a trait makes someone less likely to survive, that species might go extinct. So how does this variation occur? Well, variation occurs through mutations in DNA and through sexual reproduction, where sperm from the father meets the egg from the mother and makes new combinations for the offspring. So natural selection always has a positive effect on variation because nature favors those traits that make a species or population more able to survive, and the weak traits would perish over time. So we're going to look at a couple flow charts to see how phenotypes or fur color might change from the original population. So right now, most of the mice in this population are this gray color, but there are some that are lighter and some that are darker. So in this model, we see the original population was this lighter color, but over time, something made it more favorable for the evolved population to have darker fur color. So you see a directional selection. The population shifts over time. Fur color or other phenotypes can diversify. So instead of having the middle of the road color, you actually have more light mice and more dark mice, like we saw earlier on those rocks. If a trait makes an organism really likely to survive, and that trait's really important, then you might have stabilizing selection, where the population really only has one color. The variation in that trait is very small. So behavior definitely impacts evolution. Some species have differences between males and females, like lions. The male and the female don't look the same. So males and females can choose what individual they want to mate with. Some traits mean that that individual is more fit for the environment. Sometimes, like our polar bears here, they might fight over females. And sometimes the females get to decide, like with our bird friend over here. Male birds do a silly dance and have silly feathers so that the female gets to decide if that male is likely to be a suitable father and pass on good genes. So now we should have a good idea of how evolution acts a little bit. It acts on variation in traits due to mutation, sexual reproduction, and natural selection.